to our presenter. We're going to transfer the order, if that's okay with our group, to allow Doug Leader to present the item Future for Local Government Update. Now that's on page 30. Reason being is we're just not too sure how long he will be able to stay on Zoom. So welcome to say their presenters.
We'll move to the comfort seats.
Okay, apologies about that. Chairman, Doug, Chairman Leader, are you online and ready? Yes, yes. Thank you. Thank you. I'll just make sure that we do have Doug there and ready.
Yes, I'm just going to get rid of this.
Oh, okay. Okay, so
I'm here, Mayor Tanya.
Thank you very much. As this has been moved into the public excluded, what I'll ask here is that we do just take a short time in public excluded, then we will return to the normal order of business. So apologies, we will go in, then out, then back in. So that was moved by Commissioner Tolley and seconded by Mayor Faylene, that we will go into public excluded. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Thank you.
Just so that you know, I'm standing for chair leader for the rest of the meeting, so if you want to kick me out, you'll probably exclude. I'm happy to do that, but you're good.
Thank you very much. So just to summarise of what we've just done for the record is we have just discussed the Future for Local Government Update by Penny Regional Council. This item was moved into public excluded to allow Chair Leader to present, and we do have the recommendations noted in the report and confirm that the item and its attachments remain in public excluded. We now have our report and presentation. Our first one for today, we are back on page 6 of the agenda, is the Bay of Plenty Climate Risk Assessment Next Steps. So I'd like to welcome Nick Newman and also Jane Palmer, both Penny Regional Council staff members who will lead this item. We do have a PowerPoint, and before the presentation starts, may I please have a mover and seconder to receive this report. Moved by Mayor Denia, seconded by Mayor Luca. All those in favour to receive the report, please say aye. Thank you. Over to you, Chair.
Good, just also like to mention that this is a collaborative effort amongst local governments. So we have online Megan Wakefield from Western Bay of Plenty District Council. We've got Victoria Blake from Health New Zealand. We'll have Hannah from Kawerau and Catherine from Otago District Council online as well. So we'll take the paper as read. Last time we presented you with the Regional Climate Risk Assessment, which you received. It was publicly released, and you asked us to come back with a collective view of what we're doing in terms of using the assessment. And that's what the paper and the presentation covers. We're briefly going to work through with you a recap on how the local government is using the risk assessment. We've also put in the paper what we know of the sectors and how they are using it. We're not going to present on that. You have an overview in your paper of work that's going on across the sectors. We're also going to seek your support for our collaborative working group and its ongoing work. This is a tag team, by the way, so you're going to have to, because it's a collaborative effort, you're going to have to deal with the talking heads.
Yes, and on Zoom as well, when we come to the perspectives from the different local councils. So this is just to set the regional risk assessment into context. This diagram is included in the paper, and really just to show you the flow of information, how these pieces of work and information inform each other. So the regional risk assessment provides that common baseline and platform for the region, to then drill down to that more detailed level local risk assessment and adaptation planning, as well as the sector-based elements to that. And you'll see the flows of information flow from each level back up, and the regional risk assessment isn't a static thing in time. It will need to be revised over time as more information becomes available. So information coming from those local levels will also need to come back to inform that regional overview. So through the presentation, we're just going to give you a brief highlights from each of the local councils, particularly around the work they're doing in the council infrastructure space and in that local risk and vulnerability assessment and adaptation planning space. So staff from Tauranga were unable to make it today, so I'll give a brief update from Tauranga City Council on their behalf. So we've just provided this map here. This is taken from volume 2 of the regional risk assessments. You may recall that that's a district level summary, and each district had a brief summary of the climate hazards and risks associated with that district or city. So this just gives you an overview, a snapshot of the hazards and the key elements of risks for Tauranga City. In terms of what is in place in Tauranga currently, there's been a strong focus on the council infrastructure through the Infrastructure Resilience Programme. So that's been in place for a number of years now, and that will be continued to build upon in the next LTP, particularly around the resilience of bridges. And the major step forward for Tauranga is development and finalisation of the first climate action and investment plan. So that is a broad-ranging action plan which covers both mitigation and adaptation. But in the adaptation space, there's a series of resilience goals that will be set through that plan, which includes improving information to the natural hazards data to enable better decision making. And thinking back to that overview diagram there, stepping down into that local risk and vulnerability assessment, which is a great next step, drawing on that regional risk assessment information, and also doing some work at that community level as the bottom-up approach, and piloting a DAP framework. DAP is Dynamic Adaptive Pathways Planning Process, which is a way of planning for uncertainty. That's a key tool that's used in the adaptation space. As far as I'm aware, that's the first pilot process that we've got going within the region, so that will be really exciting to see that unfold. Now I'm going to hand it over to Meg with Western Days. You should be on Zoom.
Yes, I'm here. Yeah, so again, a snapshot taken from the report showing the climate change risks and hazards that will be likely to be present in the Western Bay, fairly similar to Tauranga, and I guess that's just due to the nature of our majority of our communities also being in that sort of coastal region. Can we move on to the next slide? Thank you. So key pieces of work happening at Western Bay Plenty is continuing with our council-owned infrastructure risk assessments. We're just coming up to the end of the very first one, supported by Tonkin and Taylor. So the next few months we'll be looking at how to integrate that information into our asset management processes. We'll also continue to work with local community organisations, just helping to build understanding of natural hazards, exposure and risk. So at the moment, we're working alongside Bay Plenty Regional Council with the Waihi Beach Surf Club. They are undertaking their very first climate change adaptation plan. We're hoping this will be a good platform to leapfrog off in terms of building the wider community understanding of hazards and risks as well. Currently, through the long-term plan process, we're looking at getting some funding in place. It's not confirmed yet for going down to that local climate change risk and action plan level, and just continuing to look at other opportunities to collaborate with regional council and other councils in the sub-region and wider region on climate change adaptation plans. So an example of that is the Makatu community, and as mentioned before, the Waihi Beach project currently underway.
Thanks, Megan. Move on to Rosario.
I think Craig or Steph Ross were potentially going to talk to this item about. Do you want to speak, take me to the item or progress to?
Yes, I think I'm going to have to. Steph Ross has handed that back across to me. So I suppose if we just click to the next slide, just as an overall picture there. Obviously, we've got a climate action plan and a number of things we're working through. So we're obviously doing some of the waste recovery stuff, FOGO work at the moment, but there's also a number of other actions we're starting to look at, and it's really been a focus for us now about making sure we're taking the current modelling. We've got regional councils modelling, which tends to show the unmitigated effects of climate change, so that's our baseline. We've been doing a significant amount of work with Tonkin and Taylor, so as we start looking at the delivery around our future development strategy, we can start taking a more nuanced approach to the total picture. If you just click through onto that next slide, so really from our perspective, we really need to look at all of the options, so hence Stavros's comments there around unconstrained option analysis. We do actually have to look at all the different models and options, and that does require that close working relationship and partnership with Bay Plenty Regional Council. Drainage system viewed as a single integrated network, certainly for our urban area. We've got an upper catchment back into our farming area, comes down through Caldera into the city, which is that sort of lower catchment, and then obviously for us too, the lake levels and the water retention across the lakes, which are causing us significant issues currently on the back of the huge rain events we've currently had. It's all part of that integrated system. So for us, we're doing a significant amount of work on master planning and starting to work towards putting in place our comprehensive stormwater consent, supported thankfully by the Infrastructure Acceleration Fund. So again, this goes back to the significant investment we've got going into stormwater management to support growth and development in the city and also improve our climate resilience. So I think Stavros's view in putting these comments together was that we really do need to look at the cost effectiveness, benefit cost of some of those interventions. At the moment, holding water back up through the catchment versus adjustments to lake levels is an issue that I think has been raised through the Te Aroha Lakes Steering Group as well for further review and analysis. So the last sort of 3 or 4 points there, I think, go to pieces of work that we're looking at. I would have picked another word, note the cost, opportunities and risks arising from limiting development or retreating. You know, that's an opportunity for us to build that kind of consideration into our future development strategy. And obviously from that, directing us into future plan changes. So certainly high on the joint action plan we need to put in place with the regional council around our future development strategy is to take the information we've learned from North to Heart, and obviously the work around the Te Aroha Lakes Steering Group, look at the lake management constraints and really build that into our flooding and hazard plan changes, which are the sort of next sequence of changes we need to put in place behind our national policy statement for the development capacity for residential growth. So really that hazard information needs to come together, and I think there's a lot of joint work for us to do with the regional council.
Thank you. So staff from Whakatane District Council aren't available today, so I'm just going to briefly talk to the information there. What you may have picked up so far is, you know, from the diversity of work and the diversity of the assets to reflect the diversity of our region. Focus in Whakatane, the key message there is getting all of the natural hazards information up to date, so that it can inform the local level vulnerability and risk assessment that's planned for the Whakatane district. So that goes back to the diagram that Jane presented at the start, the flow down to get to that local level of understanding risk and vulnerability to enable adaptation planning at the local level. So that's the state of play with Whakatane district. Catherine, are you there?
I am here. Good morning, everyone. Yes, first thank you to Jane and Nick for bringing this report together. On the slide here, you can see sort of our district is mainly coast, so our risks are sort of coast focused, making sure that our key infrastructure up and down the coast is resilient. If I could flip to the next slide, excellent. So yes, building on the regional risk assessment, we are now moving into a process of creating a district level risk assessment to empower and engage our communities in understanding what the risks are with climate change and adaptation. The key focuses for our organisation are on our 3 waters infrastructure to ensure that we can enable growth as we look to sort of build on our assets and investments, and the transport infrastructure, as I mentioned, especially along the coast, making sure that in the light of recent extreme weather events, our district can still connect with the rest of the bay and also with Tairāwhiti. We found that it's a very key piece of infrastructure across the district. Thank you.
And do we have Hannah online?
Yes, do you hear me? Sorry. I'm as usual multitasking. Can you all hear me?
Morning, Connie. We can hear you. Hi.
Oh, very good. Hi, Faylene. Hi, everyone. Yes, it's a picture of Covero. Everybody know where Covero is and what it looks like. Go to the next slide. Discuss with you our issues and what we've been doing. So Covero is unique in New Zealand that we are completely urban. So the climate risks that we face are quite different to many of the other councils. From our experience in the work we've done, we've identified flooding, risk to homes and infrastructure. We've recently discovered that we're also susceptible to a high water table that risks our roads and also our water supplies. And then during the opposite side, then we have severe droughts, we have significant fire risks, be it to the rural areas and the forestry surrounding our district. Right. So what we've done for flooding, we've done assessments internally and together with consultants WSP on assessing the stormwater requirements of all our critical areas. From that, we've installed new culverts in River Road, built retention dams on the farm land and the forest surrounding our district. These 2 actions have been very successful. We've had significant flooding in the past. Since we've done these actions, we've had no flooding, especially during this year. We had record rainfall. We experienced no flooding, so it was quite good to see how well that flooding already worked and how well the actions came out. Then we discovered this year as well is because of the high rainfall, we had a very high water table. Of course, this is New Zealand, North Island wide. So we saw damage to our roading infrastructure. So we did a lot of drainage extra work to lower the high water table, to protect our roading infrastructure. We're still looking at further drainage development on private properties, on areas surrounding our district. It's the source of the high water table problems. Surprisingly, it had a great effect on our water supply. It affected one of our springs, rendered it unusable. So we are currently looking at developing alternative drinking water sources if we have high water table in the future, or the current high water table persists. We have fire risk from the surrounding forestry and farmland, very close proximity to the houses. So what we currently have here is a very good emergency response plan in collaboration with our industry. We developed a very good fire station right here, fully staffed, and that was originally done for the industries, but it serves for us also as an extra protection for fire risk. We manage the vegetation near homes, and we've expanded and maintained our fire hydrants and infrastructure on the cover perimeter. So we are quite well protected from that. That's all from my side, I believe.
Thanks, Anno. We'll just move on briefly to give a snapshot of work that the Regional Council is doing in this space, in line with the risk assessment. So we have a river scheme sustainability project, which is looking at each of the region's river schemes, looking out 100 years to the climate projections, and then looking at sustainability of those river schemes and what interventions are needed to provide flood protection over the coming century. There's also the natural hazards work of the Regional Council done in conjunction with the territorial authorities and the Bay Hazards Viewer to make that information available. Work we do with our integrated catchments teams that delivers, I guess, resilience for our waste systems. So an example of that would be work with landowners helping to keep sediment out of lakes and estuaries, which is only going to become more of an issue with those big intense rain events becoming more frequent and more intense. That work's going to be really important to protect those ecosystems. In the coastal space, some of the work our catchment teams do is work restoring coastal wetlands. Those coastal wetlands provide a resilience buffer against wave energy and increased wave energy we're getting. Coastal wetlands are our friend. They also sequester significant amounts of carbon, so they're twice over our friend. We have our community-led adaptation funding, and you've heard reference to a couple of projects already with Makatu and Waihi Beach Surf Club. I'll talk about those in a brief moment. I think part of the work we do is that I work with that collaborative and collective view across the region, so we facilitate the working group which has worked on this presentation and paper with the sectors, and we'll work more closely with you as the example with Rotorua Lakes Council was mentioned. Can't quite see the region, I think, or maybe this is my eyes, but there's a little snapshot of the community-led projects which we've got underway. So last LTP, we had this idea that we thought there were communities out there who were ready to start having their own adaptation conversations. We set up a funding initiative to support them based on their readiness, based on their need rather than local government's need. And we've had 7 of those communities come to us for support so far. The Makatu project, which has had some really good media coverage, have completed their project. Currently, we, Regional Council, working with Western Bay, are supporting the Waihi Beach Surf Lifesaver Club, and they're going through a complete dynamic adaptive planning process with the board at the moment. So that's a really neat project for learning as well as supporting the board. So the background to that project, why it came about, was Surf Lifesaver New Zealand worked with GNS to do a report on the surf clubs across New Zealand and the coastal hazards they faced. And there were 3 clubs in New Zealand which were identified as really high risk, and Waihi Beach was one of those. And that's what initiated them coming to us and seeking funding and support. So that gives us, a start of understanding who's thinking, which communities are actually thinking about this seriously and want to start taking things into their own hands, which is a fantastic way to start. Victoria, this is you. If you're here.
Kia ora, can you hear me?
We can.
Awesome. Kia ora tātou, ko Victoria tōku ingoa, ko o te kaihu tu whakauka mō Te Whatuora. I'm Victoria Blake, Interim Head of Sustainability for Te Whatuora Health New Zealand. We've heard a lot today about the physical risks, but we also know that climate change is actually one of the biggest threats to human health and well-being. And the National Climate Risk Assessment has also indicated that the impact on social cohesion. So councils obviously have a responsibility for their communities, as does Te Whatuora Health New Zealand and their health and well-being. This has been a really amazing opportunity to partner with the councils to ensure that a health and wellbeing lens has been built strongly into the planning and the discussions as we move forward. Te Whatuora Health New Zealand and Manatū Hauora have responsibilities under the National Adaptation Plan, in particular in relation to climate health action plans, and we are working with local government to create these plans to reduce duplication and ensure that we're taking a really broad lens across all of the work. What this does is it really helps us to not work in silos, really reduces duplication and cost, but also brings a very holistic lens to the work that we're doing. We do need to work together, and we have been doing a very successful job so far. It's been a genuine privilege. I'm lucky to be locally based, to be able to work with the Bay of Plenty Regional Council in this work to date, and I do hope that we can continue with this as we move forward. Kia ora.
Thanks, Victoria. Sorry, kia ora, thanks Victoria. So just drawing on from what Victoria was saying about that collaborative nature of the work that we've all done together with the councils within the region and with Te Whatuora. As it says in the paper, we were seeking the support and acknowledgement of the 4-on-4, the work that this technical group is doing, and the collaborative value of this group going forward. We've built a really strong knowledge base. The group's been together over 2 years now, so we have those good connections and relationships. not just within local government, also extending wider to other sectors. And there's real value in being able to work together to have develop joint approaches so we're not duplicating effort, and we've got an efficiency and we've got a joined up response. A good example of that is hopefully when it comes to those local risk and vulnerability assessments at the local council level, that the group can work together to identify a common methodology that each local councils can use, so there's that comprehensive and joined up picture. And it's also building capability and links beyond just the local government space, so I think there's real value, and it's been a pleasure working with our colleagues from the local councils on this project, and hopefully more going forward. That was the end of our presentation. Of course, we're happy to take questions as well as hopefully people are still online, maybe, from the other councils.
And thank you very much to all the staff across the region who presented. We have our first question from Commissioner Tolley.
Thank you. Look, it was really a question, but winding down the question. So I represent local government on the Cyclone Mayoral task force that the government put together to take a high-level overview of recovery from not only Cyclone Mayoral, but there's other serious weather events, and to talk with government about a long-term. And I just wanted to say they have no idea of the sort of work that I think is an ignorance about the depth and the sophistication of the work that territorials and regional councils are doing. That's not just government, that's people sitting around the table who are representing unions, business, etc. So I guess my question is, it's the links beyond local government, but we should think seriously, because whoever's in government is going to be taking forward some long-term policy and legislation around climate adaptation, and we need to make sure that there is knowledge down in central government as to just how much work is actually on the ground. Otherwise, from past experience, we know they will legislate over the top of us and not necessarily taking account what's already been done and what's not. So have you thought about that? I guess if I put a question on the end of that, have you thought about that? And it would be interesting to hear also if you have anything about how you intend to do it. There is an opportunity through a briefing to get in there, for instance, and that's working through DIA, who will be happy to preparing a briefing and coming.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the acknowledgement of all of the work that is going on at the local level. We have been quite active in trying to influence environment and get that story told through Zero Kahika and the Climate Climate Change Commission. Both Jane and I have been on various working groups with MFE and trying to, I guess, get that local view across, but I think it's at all levels. It's at our level and at the political level as well. So you're absolutely right. We have to make sure that bright new ideas don't just come over the top with no knowledge of what's happening on the ground.
My suggestion would be thinking about doing a short briefing to the new local government minister, because that's the champion sitting around the cabinet table for local government. More information we give them, a better chance we have.
Yeah, I think so.
I should also mention there's also the Aotearoa Climate Adaptation Network, which is a network of local government staff working in the adaptation space, and we're building very strong links with, working very closely with MFE around that. So there's another route there that can be taken from the briefing. Thank you.
Yeah, and just want to suggest perhaps we take that down as an action point following on the election. If the committee's okay with that, thank you. We've got Councillor Winters, followed by me, Debbie, and then me, Trudy.
Thank you, Ben. Commissioner, and thank you for opening the door for me. Or have I got a deal for you in terms of information that the regional council has gathered across the bay? And it's sort of lessons learned from Gabriel. And yes, we dodged a bullet across the bay, but we got our staff to do a lessons learned. Could it happen here in terms of rainfall? Yes, it could. Could the slash happen here? Not so much, but me and David knows in his neck of the woods there's some forest harvesting companies up in the East Cape that work on very steep ground, and we've done a sort of a very high overview of could it happen here. So we've got a lot of information at our fingertips, and I'm happy to share the report that came to Operations and Monitoring Committee about a couple of months ago, Nick, in terms of what would the Bay of Plenty look like if Gabrielle hit, and it's not pretty. But that we can share that with you to go to the local government minister as a briefing, because it has severe implications not for our river schemes, but our land use going forward, and we're going to have Heke Parata come and present to the Bay of Plenty Regional Council soon on her report of the slash from the East Cape. That was profound what happened there, and my goodness, we've got to do everything we can to make sure it doesn't happen here, and it could do in isolated spaces, but that's why we're going out with a 100-year river scheme plan, not just for Nongata, but for Rangataiki, Whakatane, and for our river schemes in the East Cape as well, because we don't have river schemes up there, and I'm wanting to get my council up there in terms of what can we do to protect the East Cape rivers, because there's about 9 rivers up there that we don't have river schemes on, and they flood and they go like hell and they take everything with them. So could the bridges wash out here? I don't think so, here in the East Cape, but certainly there would be devastation in terms of rainfall events that happen here, and we would be, it wouldn't be pretty. But happy to share that information, Madam Chair, with you going forward so that we can brief incoming government about the risks across the Bay of Plenty. And it's not just in East Cape, it's right across the Bay of Plenty. Cheers.
Thank you very much. Councillor Denyer, Mayor Denyer.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I'll respond to Councillor Winter's comment. Could it happen there? Yes, it could, and it has. So in isolated spots, so we have had a bridge wash out, and we have had slash deposited across orchards with a fair bit of destruction. So nothing like the East Cape, but it was pretty bad in those isolated spots. But the question I wanted to raise was, it talks in the report about each council being on a different stage of the journey, and I just want to get a feeling for how we're getting everyone up to speed and talking from the same page, as it were. If everyone's got different resourcing capacity and capabilities, how are we enabling everyone to to come together and be at the same stage? Because from looking at each council's doing, it's quite different.
Is there anything happening at the moment to share those resources and information?
I guess that's what we're doing through the working group, is sharing that understanding. But in fact, just in terms of that commonality, the actual regional risk assessment itself gives a commonality, so it gives a common language, it gives common issues to work with, and then from there, I guess those partnerships are forming in terms of at that local level. For example, ourselves in Western Bay of Plenty working in the Waihi Beach example, and then the working group is being established with Rotorua Lakes Council, the strategy group, looking at the lakeside communities. So that's another example of where that's happening. So I think that there's a balance between uniformity and responding to local needs and local environment.
So I think the technical working group also has a big role in helping everyone bring the capability there. It's just how can we as a forum influence that? Otherwise we're just getting updates from local councils, and the forum. I think the forum should have some sort of role in bringing everyone up to a level that they've got the capability and understanding.
I don't know if that's a question for me or a question for yourselves, but I guess that LTPs are coming up. I guess that's a key vehicle, isn't it, for ensuring this resourcing and supporting the capability in the space going forward.
I think through the chair, just a couple of thoughts for me and Tanya. I completely agree
that there is a difference between a different pace and capability and actual true localism. So post our 2023 Super Local Conference, while it might look vastly different, it's the beauty of localism is that we should be concentrating on the matters that are important to us, and when we can lift that to a regional space, if there's some commonalities across all of our councils that we actually are able to be together in that regional way to be able to address those things. It's just some thoughts we can perhaps for a forum. I refer back to the table on pages 10 to 12 with regards to the importance of potentially an incoming new government or and the ability to be able to message really strongly the work that we are doing with central government. And I appreciate the very strong advocacy from Victoria Lake, from Whatu Ora. We do have, from what I can see, 2 central government organisations in DOC and Te Whatu Ora. Let us not lose the opportunity for government to actually communicate within itself to itself. It's not only the incoming ministers, but it's actually the officials. That's really where things will lie and will often determine the pace and speed and appetite of what gets done. But let's not lose sight of we are already having those local conversations from what I get from both Jane and Nick. And there's also that opportunity as well as speaking to ministers in the governance space. Thank you.
I just have a question leading on from Ben Devia's comments around the resource and capability. I appreciate that for some of our smaller councils especially, perhaps if we're lucky or if they're lucky, there will be one person dedicated to working on climate change, if they're lucky, and they often have many other roles and responsibilities that their time is allocated to. So just in terms of, I know we've done this initial gathering of data and information. Has there been any sort of light bulb moments or any opportunities that have been seen to work more collaboratively so that we could support potentially councils that don't have the capacity of staff to go into the detail that's required to collect the information to make decisions on what to put into the long-term plan?
And maybe that's a question we do know to local government colleagues and the territorial authorities for any thoughts they might have. So, Amelia and Catherine there?
Elder, you can hear me?
We can hear you.
Excellent, cool. So the Opotiki is one of those examples that Mayor Tapsell just pointed out, but I think if Regional Council supports this technical working group and continues to allow for it in its LTP and perhaps extends it into the smaller TAs, perhaps it's resourcing, perhaps it's knowledge, perhaps it's staff, I think that will continue to build on what already exists. What already exists at a local level for us works quite well. So I think continuing this group is probably one of the best ways that would work for Opotiki to move forward on adaptation planning.
Yeah, I wanted to mirror what Catherine was saying, that the working group is really valuable for building capacity and building knowledge and having an aligned approach across the region, even if we are working with local knowledge, local solutions, having that same sort of framework for approaching the community means that we'll be able to compare results and compare learnings down the track.
If I could just make one comment on that, is the fact that we are trying to have real conversations from a more central perspective as to how we are linking with community and ensuring that we are taking quite a holistic approach around climate risk and adaptation, including our colleagues at MFE. So there's quite a lot going on in this space, and I do think that trying to bring more of our central colleagues into this working group as well as an opportunity to ensure that capability is being built, as well as engagement across the motu.
Thank you. Were there any further responses from staff before we move to the next question? There appear to be none. The questions are in order of Mayor Turinui, Commissioner Tolley, and then Mayor Luca.
Through the chair, please. I've actually just seen the other note that I wrote down, jotted down really quickly, as well as the importance of informing central government post the October elections. Let us not lose sight of the opportunity to actually inform the very communities that we serve. In the absence of reading this document, I really wouldn't have been fully aware of the depth of our work. If I'm not aware, I wonder how many other people. So let's not let ourselves down while trying to ensure that our central government partners, colleagues, whatever the word may be, are informed that we are actually the strength of our people having the same conversations in our communities also speaks volumes of the work that we do and share. Thank you.
Thank you. And we are open to comments as well, questions or comments. Commissioner Tolley.
Thank you. Look, I'm just going to follow up on the details. I guess where I would like to know is, we're all leaders of the region, leaders of our regional councils. I don't get an overall picture of the region and who's at what level, where the gaps are. I don't know whether they're there yet or whether we need the next meeting to get that, but it would be really helpful because as you go into an LTP, you are very reliant on the information being fed up to you. And an opportunity to lead in that conversation, knowing that at a regional level, we're made aware that there are gaps that need to be filled. There's a variety of ways to fill those, but if we don't know, we can't ask the right questions. So it'd be really helpful. I mean, I think the work that's being done is tremendous. But that's where I assumed tell us what the situation is, because then we can take action.
Can I just reflect on that? And I think that maybe that's something for all of us to do who are as part of this group, is ensure that we're communicating back up in our own organisations what the gaps might be. So there's a collective view of gaps, but then there's also one of the gaps in Tauranga, for example, this is working, that you need to know.
Yeah, not really a question, but since Mayor Denia opened the Pandora's box on resourcing, and given what I heard in the presentation by Chairman Leader that there is no money tree, and what Commissioner Tolley said, it wasn't about the money. Well, actually, it's all about the money, and money in our modern system is a purely human artifact. We invented it. We created it from nothing, and that's all fine, and I can give you the academic definition of what money is, but it can be created from money, it depends what you do with it. Now, if you just fritter it away, that's one thing, but if you build infrastructure with it, that's something else, and this government has created lots of money. In fact, if you look at the monetary base, the amount of money in the system has been increasing exponentially for the last, since it was first probably, since the fiat money system came into being, which was, I guess, 1971. So money's created from nothing, it's about what you do with it. And everywhere I go in local government circles, the only thing I ever hear is that we've got lots of challenges, but we've got no money. Well, we are not the creators of money. Money is created by the Reserve Bank, under the watch of the government, and by commercial banks. So we've got a license to print the stuff, essentially. And if we don't fix the system, which is really on the brink of falling to pieces, then there'll be no resources for us to do what we need to do. And so this could just be all hot air, you know, unless we have resources. So thank you, Mayor Denia, for opening Pandora's box.
Thank you. Comments from John.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's a great conversation, and It's the first time I've heard from this group collectively, and coming back to James's question about where different councils are sitting, and I heard very strongly through the team and from Megan that there's real value in this group coming together, and actually that's where we'll get the growth of the understanding and support of each other to help that capacity across council, whether you're small or large, just the learning by collectively working together. So I love that, and I think that's great. I totally support the fact that it's about localism. A lot of the solutions are about localism. You're not going to get deeply involved in Waihi Beach or us in Kawerau, but obviously there's obviously a real link here with the regional council who are working across all of the councils, so that's great as well. I think that capability and capacity will come through this group as they meet more and more and share, which is wonderful. They're not going to solve the funding issues actually to do with infrastructure, but that's not their job. And what they will do is inform us to, at a local level, in our LTPs and our annual plans. I think what's still missing for me a little bit, and coming back to the point that was made over there, and it will come, I can feel it coming, is what are the common issues that rise to the top? Where can we see those same things happening across council that this group can really grab onto and influence change through leadership? So I think we'll see those rising to the top, because those are the things that we want to spend our time on here rather than Waihi Beach. So if you're going to help with Waihi Beach, then great as well.
Thank you very much, John. Are there any final comments on this item? There appears to be none. It's been really good discussion. Thank you very much to the staff from all of our authorities who have presented this morning. Thank you. We now move to our next item. We are on solid waste disposal discussion, page 19 of our agendas. And I'd like to hand over to Mayor Victor Luca, who will present this item. I believe we also have the
Okay, prior to returning to New Zealand at the beginning of 2019, I was a researcher. 22 years of my career was based in the nuclear research agencies and government, and I was dealing with the area of radioactive waste management across the whole nuclear fuel cycle. And so I've got a bit of an interest in waste, but I guess whether or not you call tyres waste or not, or any kind of waste for that matter, I would say that there is no such thing as waste. Everything we call waste is mined from the earth, and it can be viewed as a resource. So when it comes to tyres, which is a very specific issue, I mean, in the next talk we'll hear about construction and demolition waste, but one man's waste is another man's treasure. So tyres are actually referred to in this rest of this talk as end-of-life tyres. They've got to the end of their life in their application, but they can be used for something else as well. Don't know what happened there, but I can keep talking. Yesterday we had a talk in our council meeting, had a bit of a brief on solid waste. And we produce in all councils all sorts of solid wastes. You can see in the next slide. Okay. So this comes from the literature, the scientific literature anyway, and it roughly corresponds to what we're generating in our council. So plastics or polymers are about 7% of total solid waste. There's also organic matter, paper, metal, glass, and all sorts of things. And we're focused in on tyres, and there seems to be an interest in the Eastern Bay with doing something with tyres. In this country, we generate 7 million tyres per year, end-of-life tyres. They've become a real problem. And it doesn't matter what kind of car you drive, and we've got about a fleet of 5 million in the country, you can't go anywhere if you don't have a tyre. So modern tyres look like simple things. They're designed to be highly durable, give you traction and allow your car to actually manoeuvre. But it's their very durability that becomes a problem when it comes to doing something with them. So tyres are quite complex materials, not as simple as they look. There are about 1.5 billion of them end-of-life tyres on the planet, and increasing, and this is probably old, so probably at 2 billion by now. Without tyres, none of us would be driving anywhere, and no matter what car you drive, you're going to need them. So, tyres are made up of about 30% of a material called carbon black. So if you barbecue and use charcoal, that's sort of black, that's carbon. And without that carbon and other fillers like silica, very small grain silica, of dimensions about the nanometer or micron range, your tyres would wear out very quickly. But there are other chemicals involved. There's a vulcanization process involved to take natural rubber and turn it into a rubber, or synthetic polymers as well. They're also combined. There's zinc in there and lots of other things. So my point is that they're not simple materials, and because they're not simple materials, they're not that simple to dispose of either. I mean, humans in the technological age generate thousands times more waste than we did when we were peasants in the field 200 years ago. And all of those things that we have need to be dealt with at the end of their life. And as I said, tyres are complex, so we can have a chemical breakdown on what's in a tyre. Some of those things probably aren't too nice to be having floating around in the environment. There are lots of chemicals generated during the use of the tyre, as well as the disposition. So the world population is 7 billion, but this is 2014, so you can ratchet that up a bit. And, this is kind of a dump of what I've been researching this subject for well over a year, probably two. Current global practice is that 3 to 15% of tyres are recycled, 5 to 23% are reused, 20 to 30% end up in landfill or distributed around the place. You'll see some pictures of what happens in New Zealand soon. 25 to 60% are incinerated. Incineration means combusted, which means we're basically burning them and we're turning them into carbon dioxide. So if the tyre is a waste and it's polluted, then the carbon dioxide we generate is actually one of the worst pollutants that we have, and we shouldn't be doing it. But you'll see that that's the standard practice in this country at the moment. So this is what happens around New Zealand. Tyres on silage piles. If you drive from Whakatane to the Western Bay, you'll see piles of tyres lying on the side of farmland and all the rest of it. And the mountains keep growing. Lots of pretty pics here about what happens with tyres. And here's the situation that Culver is quite familiar with. This ended up in a court case. They were supposed to be gathering them and doing something with them. Nothing actually ever happened. Human will probably be able to give us more insight on what happened there. Another problem with tyres, apart from the fact that they just sit around, is that they can catch fire, and there's been some quite spectacular ones, including in the town of Rolleston. And when you burn a tyre, the stuff that you produce is actually quite toxic, given that it's a complex mishmash of chemicals that's in the tyre in the first place. So you're producing all sorts of things. Not a good thing to have. So until 2012, nothing was happening with end-of-life tyres in New Zealand. They were just sitting around occupying waterways and whatever. But in 2012, this tyre-wise stewardship came into being. One of their first jobs was actually get an inventory of where the tyres are, what the volumes are and which places and all. Stock take. And they've seem to be working quite hard. They've been getting some government money to do their work. And they're also looking at what can be done with them. And while you can, if the presentations are, you've already got copies of it, so you can go and listen to the Tyre-wise boss, and he can give you a rundown on what they're up to. But they've got the stewardship scheme, so companies import the tyres and they get a chunk of that money. One of the main avenues for our tyres is Golden Bay Cement Works. Probably most of our tyres are going there and they're being used as a fuel. So they're being combusted. And we're replacing the coal with or gas with tyres, and whichever way you look at it, CO2 is the ultimate product, and so we should be stopping with that since our emissions are the cause of the climate change problems that we've been talking about. We should be converting Golden Bay to some other heat source. And the Climate Change Commission has talked about conversion of some of our industries like the cement works, pulp and paper, milk production, and others to other types of fuels or electricity directly. But we're burning tyres, and we shouldn't be. But there's other options that they're exploring. They're looking at putting, you've probably seen documentaries on including tyre, small tyre chips into concrete and things like that. In council, I was quite surprised to find that there was some concern about dust. I'm diverting here just a little bit because tyres produce two types of waste. One is waste or resource, whichever way you want to look at it. One's the tyre, but the other is the product that the tyre produces when it's actually being used. So we're very worried about dust, and we're also worried about exhaust emissions. And there's all sorts of standards which have been becoming more and more stringent with time. But we haven't really worried too much about what happens with tyres. So I was travelling to one of the atomic centres in Buenos Aires, and since I've got 2 hours on a bus on public transport, I have nothing to do but think and look out the window and think. I thought to myself, well, what happens with whatever the tyre produces when it ends up on the road? Turns out that this is becoming increasingly acknowledged as a serious problem. Tyres, when they wear, from the time you buy it to the time you get it changed, a normal car tyre, which weighs about 10 kilos, will lose 3 kilos of its mass. That ends up on the road, which ends up not only in the road, it ends up in the atmosphere, the road, waterways, and you name it. And since a big chunk of what's in the tyre is a polymer, and we're very concerned about things like microplastics. Tyres are generators, as we use them, of plastics which end up in ecosystems and end up in our ecological system, in animals' bodies, in our bodies. So there's an outfit called Emissions Analytics, which is a UK-based outfit which has got going relatively recently. Their job is to look at the chemical composition of tyres, because no two tyres are the same, and look at the emissions that are generated and the toxicity of the emitted compounds. Some of them will be gaseous too, and probably not very nice chemicals to have. So just to let you know. So we're very concerned about microplastics these days, but we don't think twice about the pollution that comes off our tyres, which happens to be about 1,250 times more than what comes out of the exhaust pipe of a modern vehicle. That's an intractable problem, possibly, because if we're going to drive, we have to have tyres. So, just an example of a recent publication, tyre wear particles an emerging threat to soil health. Soils are important to us in this country, and I guess a lot of what we generate on the road ends up in our soils, because some of these particles are so small that they can stay in the atmosphere for a very, very long time. Okay, so that just gives you an idea of some of the emissions coming from tyres and used tyres compared with what comes out of your exhaust. When we talk about waste, which I said we weren't going to call it waste, but there's this hierarchy of what we should do. So it's best to conserve or prevent. But in the modern age, it's a bit hard for us to do nothing. If we're still in caves, then we'd use nothing and we'd conserve everything, but we're not. So if we're going to use stuff, we might as well reuse it. That would be a good thing to be doing, or recycle or recover materials or use the materials as a source of energy, and without energy we wouldn't get anywhere. Or the worst thing we can do, perhaps, is landfill. Although maybe not, that has to be considered. And of course there's the stewardship programs I've been talking about for 20 years, and the idea is that the producer of the good, or the item, the product, has to come up with a solution for its disposition, or its eventual destiny, whatever that has to be defined. So this is Golden Bay Cement Works. They got a lot of money off the government, I think it's $30 million to develop or alter their process so that they can accept these tyres. But like I said, this is going to be unsustainable. And so I find it actually quite disgusting because all we're doing is burning and sending more CO2 into the atmosphere, and better things could be done. Like I said, another possibility is to add tyres to concrete, but there's only so much of that you can do. Tyres can be converted to advanced materials, and there's research going on in that area. This is just, at the research level, so it's not commercial. They can be devulcanized using chemical processes, and you can get back some of the original constituents, but that's also in the research sphere. And you can use them to make roads, and I'm not sure how successful this is, but it needs to be looked into, and I guess Tyre-Wise has got that in their sites as well. Railway sleepers can be made from mashed up tyres. And each of these things has got its pros and its cons. So since I take to writing on all sorts of matters in our local newspaper, I decided to focus in on this, what the best thing to do with tyres is, and I come to this from the nuclear sphere, and that is the process of pyrolysis. Pyrolysis is not combustion, it's heating a material, decomposing it thermally in the absence of air, in the absence of oxygen. And what you do when you do that to certain plastics is you get back carbon. And it's the process that's used, as I said at the beginning, to make charcoal. So 2.2 billion people use charcoal to heat and cook, and they get that charcoal by cutting down trees and heating the charcoal in sort of a mud sort of pile, which keeps the oxygen out of the system. But when you pyrolyse a tyre, so you heat it in an oxygen-free atmosphere, you can get a whole bunch of products, or the original constituents of the tyre. The carbon black you get back, the condensable gases become fuel oil, and of course tyres have got things like nylon reinforcing and metal. So the metal, and these are all valuable products. They have a value, which is quite substantial. As I said at the beginning, I came to this because I was trying to come up with a process for disposing of those little micron-sized plastic beads. So again, they're polymers via a pyrolysis process, which is either heating in vacuum or nitrogen or argon, anything that doesn't have air in it. And because when it comes to waste management, you want to reduce volumes. Landfill's not cheap to develop. Radioactive waste repositories are not cheap to develop. You want to reduce volume. This process reduces the volume of the plastic down from what you see on the left on that measuring cylinder to what you see on the right, so you get a 50% reduction in volume by pyrolysing. This is a nightmare because when you heat these things up, you can emit the radioactive content of materials, but that's how I got into this. So the reason that I came upon this was because pyrolysis is a commercial process for dealing with waste tyres, or so I say end-of-life tyres. You can buy a pyrolysis plant, turnkey, and so beginning of 22, I think I got a quote from a Chinese company called Weston, and they will construct for you a plant that will produce those three products. The fuel oil can be used to heat the reactor itself, and the wire has got, and the carbon black has got commercial value. You can go on YouTube and whatnot and see these things in action. There's plenty of this stuff around. That was just one company. That's the plant that you buy, but you can't just have a plant. That plant was quoted at $88,000 US. It's essentially chump change. But that's only for small scale. Okay, so that's a plant that could do, say, 500 kilos of tyre processing a day, and since we've got 6 million tyres, we need a plant that's bigger than this, but you could use it for a sort of a pilot trial. I've also been seeking quotes. Well, there's the actual quote. What they didn't quote was the shredder. But apart from the machine itself, you do need to have a place to do this. You need a facility, and you'll need forklifts and all the other things, for moving tyres around, and there's also safety health and safety protocols you have to adhere to, so they'll all add to the costing. So this looks simple, you just buy it and you're operating, but it ain't that simple. And I must say there are various, I've contacted these people, doing, or whatever, however it is you want to pronounce it. They haven't given me their quote yet. But the reason I contacted them is because they have sold 2 small units in this country. So I do know that somebody's got this in their sights, and TireWise has and the Waste Minimisation Fund has actually funded some trials. One of these units got sold on the Kapiti Coast, but like I say, it's very, very small scale. We in our district, combined districts probably, Kawerau, Poriki and Whakatane probably generate about 50,000 tyres a year, I would say. And so a small unit would probably do us. Now, since there's 3 of our interested party, the question is whether the interest extends beyond the Eastern Bay area. And of course, you can quote all sorts of size companies. I contacted this company, they said they weren't interested in providing a quote on anything for less than 3 million tyres a year. Well, that's almost New Zealand's entire inventory. They are looking at a quite a substantial investment, but I'm not sure how substantial since he wouldn't quote. But I could ask him to quote me for 6 million tyres a year. I think that this is probably the best option for dealing with tyres at the moment. The Chinese gentleman that quoted the unit for me also quoted me the value of the various waste streams, the carbon black, the metal that's produced, and the fuel oil, and well, according to him, we come up with a profit. That's what you call a circular economy. And we in Whakatane District Council that have had a climate change strategy and targets and all of this for quite a bit of time now, have waxed lyrical about circular economies. Here is a circular economy. What are we waiting for? I think that this needs to be done, and we need to stop burning tyres in cement kilns. I think that's probably me. Like I say, you can go on the web and you'll find all sorts of companies doing these sorts of things. There's a Danish firm that's got a big installation up and running. It's quite a lavish installation, but a lot of homework to be done. And TireWise is probably. I was going to call them before this meeting to find out who had actually purchased the 2 units of small pyrolyzers that are out there already. And they wouldn't tell me. They said they'd have to ask the person who purchased them before they can pass that information on. But I know that one of them has ended up on the Kapiti Coast, and I'm not sure how successful. That's probably all I need to say. End-of-life tyres, let's recover a resource. I should have mentioned that the carbon black that's used can be returned to the tyre making process in principle. So when it gets sold, it can be used as a soil amender. I mean, we've got forestry, which is sucking the lifeblood out of the soils, I would say. And that could be, so you could potentially split it out, and so soils need carbon content for retaining minerals and stuff like that. So soil amendment is one option, but the other is to return it to the tyre process. And back around the loop we go. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Luca. It's incredibly well researched.
Well, not really. You've got the light version, but there's a lot of stuff to do. And the question is, well, somebody's already got it in their sights. The question is whether our region wants to take on something like this. And the talk that follows is really about construction and demolition waste, which is kind of the same sort of thing. You know, what are we going to do? They're not waste, it's a resource. Let's do something with it. That's what we're supposed to be doing anyway.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Were there any questions or comments on this? Medenia.
I just want to check with Madeline what he's seeking at this form. Is it for us all to consider our own waste management minimisation plans, or is it to have a regional based pyrolyzer, or what's your aim?
I think that probably makes sense. I mean, at the moment, there's 3 of us that have been talking about it. Are quite interested each, Dave or Elaine can comment about their own perspective. good, but I think that it makes sense to have a larger scale facility because, you know, it's just economies of scale. I guess there's employment involved as well, as this would be an industry, and so you employ people to operate the plant and move tyres around and all the rest of it. But like I say, we're not the only ones. I mean, you could probably set up one facility to deal with almost the entire country's tyres, because we're only a small country. 6 million sounds like a big number, but it's not in the scheme of things. Some of these guys, some of these outfits that I've put up there probably build your plant and process their oil tyres. But, you know, we could go at it on a regional scale, and there is money in the waste management, waste minimisation fund for getting, you know, sort of a pilot scale thing. But what I want is just to know if there is any more broader interest beyond, say, the three of us. I mean, the Mayoral Forum is about doing something together, a collaboration. As you know, in science you collaborate because nobody's got everything, and it's a way of spreading the resource requirements. I mean, money, that resource. But yeah.
Thank you. Commissioner Tolley.
So my question then is, are you, the three of you, at this stage of reviewing the business case, or is it still early days yet?
Well, Dave.
I'm sorry for the name. It was actually Stacey's not the word. Thank you for giving me a bit. Just a couple of things. We travel some of the furthest distance to get to these meetings. The amount of tyres I see on the way here, shredded tyres from paddocks, mountains of it. It's quite incredible. I actually saw the fire in Royston. I could see it from about 80 kilometres from even quite close to it. That was unbelievable, and that was apparently the small pile of tyres. So I just recently got 4 new tyres and paid $8 each to get rid of the old ones. So for our district, that would be over $300,000 we apparently paid. I don't know what happens to their money.
But on top, I guess some of it goes to tyre wise to, I guess they'll get stashed up. They'll end up at Golden Bay.
Yeah,
they'll be transported there.
So we're already paying that. So I mean, there must be people out there. I don't know where that money goes to. Maybe we should ask the question: where does that money go? We all send our waste further afield out of our districts. Business trucks through our places normally. We would like to do something possibly with glass. I was hoping to do something on glass at the state of it. That trial didn't quite go to plan.
One case at a time.
Yeah, but it just, you know, if we did pull these things together, you know, if that's the cost of one small plant to deal with ours, where's all that money going from? So, yeah, thank you for that presentation. I have heard it a few times and it grows on each time I hear it. I think it's worth looking into. Someday we're going to be stopped from sending our waste further afield. Not to say, no, sorry, we can't take any more. Everyone you know, needs to dispose of their waste, and one day people are going to get, no one wants to have one in their backyard, so one day we might be faced with, well, we've got nowhere to take this stuff, so all these things, it's got to be a good, I don't know what we do from here. I'd love to do something as 3 small councils doing together. I don't think there's a lot of money to come up with a trial anyway, but there must be money out there. So it's more of a comment. Thank you.
Yeah, I just can't respond to that. Well, this presentation started off as a proposal that I was writing, but for that you need all the robust data. So, you know, quotes, sizes, where is it that you'd be doing it? It would be in a central facility that, say, Eastern Bay or Bay Plenty Wide or whatever. That needs, you know, a place. Building needs to be fitted out and all that. So to build a business case requires a bit of work, and we're not there yet. But this is just floating an idea and seeking expressions of interest and participants. That's all what we're doing at the moment.
Thank you.
Through the chair, thank you for the question. Very early days, I would say, and it won't be a surprise to the forum that following the initial 2014 eco-version experience that Kawerau District Council went through, that there is a whole other layer of due diligence and investigation that would have to be undertaken. At the time, 9 short years ago, when Kawerau District Council was looking to partner with eco-version with the, thank you very kindly, for having that in the presentation. We're very thankful that Regional Council did actually prosecute the directors, so the idea was that there was a promise of actually bringing in the technology to be able to do exactly what described Taiwan's as now doing in this 2023 era. That technology did not arrive, so there was a court order a few years later in 2018 to remove the tyres. So it won't surprise the forum to see that the end of tyres cycle or the lack of solutions around how we actually responsibly dispose of tyres is not a new conversation. Chair, I'm really interested in former Mayor Winters and current Councillor Winters, who would have been around in the conversation at the time of my predecessor, just around this exploration in terms of the tyres, because we've heard it and we've seen in the presentation mountains and mountains of tyres. There will come a day, there will come a time where it is no longer acceptable to ship them off to goodness knows where, and where exactly does the money go? I'm interested in actually taking a step back. We will often know where we're going if we take a step back and have a look at things and see if the conversation, Chair, has changed or progressed at all. Apologies, Councillor Winters.
Sorry. We looked at a whole lot of base strategies, a whole lot of different things. The one that excited me that never went anywhere was the deconstruction of human waste, and that was a big issue for Rotesville. It didn't go anywhere. It was a partnership between us and Sion. The pilot plant looked really good, but to commercialise it just didn't go anywhere. So there's lots of waste streams that you could go through this pyrolysis or hydrothermal deconstruction that take a lot of time, money to commercialise it, but we never went anywhere with any of them. So, and unfortunately, it's what David says, we ship it out of our communities now to somewhere else, somebody else's problem. Not a good solution, long term.
If I may thank you, Councillor Winters. At the time when we first explored this, back in 2014, there was no technology in the country. If there are examples that operate now here in New Zealand, we'd be really happy to actually cite those now. It would be a great opportunity.
As part of proper due diligence, apart from visiting whoever the ramshackle facility or whatever that's got up and running here, a visit to state-of-the-art pyrolysis plants like Denmark would have to be on the cards and try and find out if it's working for them and what the costs of operation and all that is. I mean, there's a lot of things to do, but if there's no political will, nothing gets done. So, of course, with money, but it doesn't have to be hugely expensive.
Well, certainly Rotorua would be willing to investigate further. And perhaps what I can suggest is if we connect up the staff members from the 3 different councils that currently are investigating this with the remaining councils, and then the staff can then decide if that proposal needs to go to our separate councils for approval of expressions of interest or support of principle. Sorry, carry on, Bill. Yeah, but I would like to see this progress and investigated too. I think handing it to our staff to do the next steps before coming back to us. It's just a suggestion.
No, absolutely. If you have staff, but Whakatane District Council has the solid waste team consists of 2 people, soon to be 3. Solid waste disposition is a huge area of council business. We've only got 2 or 3 people. The guy who's in charge is obviously competent. But I mean, hey, I've done this for 22 years, so it's not exactly a big deal for me. But if you've got the resourcing, that's great. If you've got the people, the personnel.
Any further comments on this item? Commissioner Toy.
So the reaction from this would be then that those of us that haven't been in the discussions go back and talk with our staff, and then maybe try and get a regional staff together to talk about what we like. We keep going into a long-term plan, but I think I'm coming with the next item on regional waste. I think, and that's why I brought it back to this forum, because the previous, before the triennial, the regional mayors were interested in regional waste, and there's many different streams of it. So from Toronto's point of view, we want to see some regional answers to our waste, and so we're very happy to have a look at how we can put it together.
Well, for resourcing, let's not forget the Waste Minimisation Fund, which was $50 million until not long ago. And I think that this is where government's got to dip into its pockets and actually bolster it, because it's not a problem. Waste management not a problem that's hugely on their radar, but I think it's becoming. And one of the board members happens to be John Ray, who is on the vote out, so I can have a chat to him and see if perhaps we can get resourcing Bay Plenty wide and help support staff members or whatever is needed for you.
Well, thank you very much. And I think we'll wrap up there and take a break for morning tea. It's 11:10. We'll take 20 minutes and resume at 11:30. And morning tea is just in our councillors' room, which is on the left-hand side. But I'll show you it. Thank you. Absolutely. So we will need to move into public excluded for our two remaining items, which is the regional waste strategy update and the Three Waters update. May I please have a move for a second? Moved by Mayor Tooney, seconded by Mayor Moore. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.